France just handed Microsoft a termination notice for 2.5 million government devices.
France's Interministerial Directorate for Digital Affairs formally announced the end of Windows on government workstations, replacing it with Linux.
France, the fifth largest economy in the world, a NATO ally, a country with 5.5 million public sector workers and one of the most sophisticated government bureaucracies on Earth, has formally handed Microsoft a termination notice covering 2.5 million government workstations. Every ministry, every agency, every local government office, every department must submit a Linux migration plan by autumn 2026.
Moving to Linux doesn't cost you anything, makes you safer, and allows you to use even old computers. Win, win, win.
The operating system that has run French government computers for 30 years is being shown the door. Not because Linux suddenly became fashionable. Not because open source advocates finally won a political argument they had been making for 2 decades. Because France ran the numbers, assessed the security risks, read the legal fine print on the cloud infrastructure they had been trusting with sensitive state data, and reached a conclusion that the French Interministerial Directorate for Digital Affairs described in language that belongs in a national security briefing rather than an IT procurement document. The state can no longer simply acknowledge its dependence. It must break free. We must become less reliant on American tools and regain control of our digital destiny. That is not the language of a cost-saving measure. That is the language of a government that has decided a strategic dependency has become a strategic liability. And when France makes that decision publicly, formally, with a prime ministerial mandate, a hard deadline, and the full backing of its National Cybersecurity Agency and State Procurement Directorate, every other government in the democratic world looks up from its own Microsoft licensing renewal and starts asking an uncomfortable question. If France decided staying was more dangerous than leaving, what exactly are we still waiting for? To understand why this moment is as significant as it is, you have to understand that France is not taking a leap of faith into the unknown. France already knows this works. The proof has been running for 20 years inside one of their most demanding and security-sensitive institutions. The French Gendarmerie Nationale, the national military police force covering the entire country, began their Linux migration in 2005. They built their own distribution called Genbuntu, based on Ubuntu, customized for French law enforcement operational requirements. By 2024, 97% of their workstations had been fully migrated. The system ran cleaner, faster, and cheaper than what it replaced. Total savings crossed 50 million euros over the lifespan of the project. The Gendarmerie's digital infrastructure operated completely outside Microsoft's control, completely outside American legal reach, and completely under French state authority for 20 consecutive years, without the catastrophic failures that Microsoft sales teams always predict when they argue against migration. France's decision to move 2.5 million government devices to Linux is not a gamble. It is a scaling exercise, taking a model that delivered extraordinary results inside one of their most demanding institutions and applying it to the rest of the administrative state. The template exists. The results are documented. The political will has finally arrived. The only question remaining is execution. The event that crystallized the decision for France, the moment that transformed migration from a long-discussed possibility into a formal mandate with a hard deadline, was a confirmation that arrived in 2025 and landed inside European government circles like a detonation. Microsoft confirmed, explicitly, what lawyers and privacy advocates had been arguing for years. Data stored in Microsoft's European data centers can be legally accessed by the United States government under the Cloud Act. Microsoft can operate servers in Paris, Frankfurt, or Amsterdam. It does not matter. When Washington asks, Microsoft must comply. European data stored on European Microsoft servers can be handed to American authorities without European courts having a say, without European governments being notified, and without any contractual commitment Microsoft makes to European clients being able to override the legal obligation created by American law. French state communications, German defense planning documents, Italian government records, all of it potentially accessible to American law enforcement and intelligence agencies through legal instruments that Microsoft cannot refuse regardless of what they promised in a licensing agreement. That confirmation did not arrive in a theoretical context. It arrived against a backdrop of the United States government demonstrating that it was willing to use digital infrastructure as a geopolitical instrument in ways that made the theoretical risk concrete and immediate. When the Trump administration sanctioned international criminal court judges following arrest warrants that created political friction with Washington, the ICC's chief prosecutor lost access to his own Outlook email system. An institution of fundamental importance to international law, the court that prosecutes war crimes and crimes against humanity, lost access to its own email because of a political dispute between the United States and the court's decisions. That is what dependency looks like when it fails in real time. Not a gradual degradation you can manage around. A complete loss of access to critical institutional infrastructure because a foreign government applied pressure to an American software company. France made its decision. They were not going to wait to discover what their own version of that scenario looked like. French Minister Anne Lejeune did not dress this up in diplomatic language. Digital sovereignty is not an option. It is a strategic necessity. Digital Affairs Minister David Amiel was equally direct. The government could no longer accept foreign dominance over critical digital infrastructure. Read those statements carefully for what they actually say. A NATO ally, a country with deep transatlantic relationships built over 70 years of strategic partnership, a G7 economy whose relationship with the United States spans every dimension of international cooperation. That country is publicly declaring, at ministerial level, that American software has become a national security liability. This is not anti-American sentiment expressed in political rhetoric. This is cold strategic logic applied to a situation that has become genuinely untenable. The anxiety is real, the trust is fractured, and the decision to act is now backed by the full institutional weight of the French state. The financial dimension of France's decision runs parallel to the security case and is equally devastating for Microsoft's long-term position in European public sector markets. Microsoft has spent years systematically tightening the financial screws on government clients who remained inside their ecosystem. A 15% licensing fee increase was imposed on public sector clients already navigating inflation, budget pressure, and rising public expectations. And here is the trap Microsoft spent decades engineering with surgical precision. The longer any institution stays inside the ecosystem, the more expensive it becomes to leave. Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, all bundled together, cross-integrated at every layer of organizational operations, each integration adding another thread of dependency that makes the exit door heavier and harder to push open with each passing year. Every SharePoint deployment, every Teams rollout, every new workflow built inside Microsoft's walls made the cost of leaving higher while making the cost of staying higher simultaneously. Microsoft's entire long-term enterprise strategy relied on that gravitational pull keeping institutions pinned inside, regardless of how their experience with the platform evolved. France just decided to blow the door completely off its hinges. And the savings numbers from governments that have already made the switch are sitting on every European finance minister's desk as evidence of what staying actually costs. Germany's Schleswig-Holstein moved 30,000 workstations to Linux and saved 15 million euros in the process. Italy's defense ministry is projecting 29 million euros in savings from their own transition currently underway. Lyon, France's third largest city, serving over 1 million residents, calculated that switching would save 1 million euros annually for every 100,000 users. Austria's military completed a full exit from Microsoft Office across its entire armed forces. The French gendarmerie saved 50 million euros over the project lifetime. Now apply the Lyon calculation to France's 2.5 million government devices. The figure becomes so large that the question reverses entirely. The question is no longer whether France can afford to switch to Linux. The question is how France could have justified not switching, given what continued Microsoft dependency was demonstrably costing. This is not fringe economics being advanced by open source advocates. This is hard fiscal logic that finance ministries and treasury departments across the continent are running through their own models and arriving at identical conclusions. The savings are real, documented, and compounding. The cost of staying is real, escalating, and accelerating. The calculation has flipped across every dimension simultaneously. The timing of the formal announcement is not coincidental. Windows 10 reached end of life in October 2025. Every government still running Windows 10, which was most of them, suddenly faced a binary choice with no comfortable middle ground. Pay for new Windows 11 licenses across tens of thousands of machines while absorbing the hardware upgrade costs driven by Windows 11's TPM requirements and processor eligibility rules. Or leave. France looked at that choice clearly, assessed the security implications of staying, calculated the financial cost of the upgrade path, and chose the exit. Every government watching France make that decision is now running the exact same calculation with France's documented results sitting on the table as a reference point. The Windows 10 end-of-life deadline that Microsoft designed as a forcing function toward Windows 11 upgrades became instead the moment that converted theoretical migration intentions into formal migration mandates across European governments simultaneously. What France is constructing to replace Microsoft's ecosystem deserves serious attention because it is not a patchwork of disconnected tools thrown together out of desperation or ideology. It is a deliberately designed sovereign digital infrastructure built from the ground up for government operational requirements, data security, and legal independence from foreign jurisdiction. CHAP provides encrypted government messaging running entirely under French state control. No American company holds the keys. No American law can compel disclosure. WebConf handles video conferencing without routing sensitive government communications through servers subject to American surveillance law. France Transfer manages secure file sharing between institutions. An initiative called OpenBOW creates interoperability standards, ensuring every open source tool communicates seamlessly with every other, eliminating the fragmentation that historically made enterprise open source adoption operationally difficult. The Linux distribution they are deploying is being built on the foundation of Genbuntu, the same distribution that proved itself across 20 years of demanding law enforcement use, scaled and adapted for broader government deployment. France is not just removing Microsoft from the equation, they are building something they own outright. Something no foreign law can reach into. Something that cannot be suspended, restricted, weaponized, or held hostage regardless of what diplomatic disputes, geopolitical tensions, or American policy decisions occur in the future. The architecture of dependency that Microsoft spent decades engineering is being methodically disassembled and replaced with architecture that answers to French law, operates under French control, and costs French taxpayers a fraction of what Microsoft's escalating licensing model was extracting. Annually. This is not reactive. It is strategic. And it is being executed with the kind of institutional commitment and political will that turns migration from an aspiration into an accomplished fact. France is not acting alone. The continental coordination behind this shift is the dimension that transforms France's announcement from a significant national decision into the beginning of something structurally transformative for Microsoft's European revenue base. Germany has mandated open document formats across all government operations, a decision that structurally removes Microsoft's file format lock-in as a retention mechanism once every government document is created in an open standard that any software can read and edit. Schleswig-Holstein's migration is being studied as an official blueprint for replication at the federal level. Italy is actively executing its own migration programs. Austria's military has completed its Microsoft Office exit. Denmark is accelerating open source strategy across public institutions. The European Parliament has formally voted to reduce reliance on non-European technology across public procurement. France and Germany are collaborating directly on shared sovereign digital tools, pooling engineering resources to build European alternatives that neither country has to purchase from a corporation headquartered outside their legal jurisdiction. The Euro Office Coalition, built around established European technology companies including Ionos, serving 6.6 million customers, and Nextcloud, running on over 500,000 servers worldwide, is producing open-source Office suites fully compatible with Microsoft's file formats, ensuring that the transition does not shatter existing workflows or create the compatibility chaos that Microsoft's sales teams always predict when making the case against migration. The infrastructure for a genuinely post-Microsoft European public sector is being constructed at this moment with serious funding, serious engineering talent, and serious political will behind it. This is not a collection of isolated national decisions made independently. This is a coordinated continental strategy driven by shared anxiety about data sovereignty, shared frustration with escalating costs, and shared understanding that digital independence is inseparable from political independence in a geopolitical environment where technology infrastructure has become an instrument of statecraft. The private sector consequences are where this story becomes existential for Microsoft's long-term European revenue model in ways that extend far beyond government licensing contracts. Government technology choices create ecosystem gravity that shapes entire industries. When a government standardizes on Linux and open source tools, every company working with that government eventually needs to match that compatibility to maintain access to government contracts and partnership relationships. The gravitational pull that once drew everyone into Microsoft's ecosystem now works in reverse. Contractors need to demonstrate Linux compatibility. Suppliers need to operate in open formats. Institutional partners need to communicate through sovereign infrastructure. Every government employee who uses Linux at work and discovers it works as well as or better than Windows becomes a potential Linux user at home and a potential Linux advocate in their private sector networks. The ecosystem starts losing mass as government adoption drives private sector reconsideration across industries. Banks, telecoms, energy infrastructure, all of which are watching France's migration as a live case study in operational viability at scale, have their own CFOs running the same licensing cost calculations with France's results as the reference point. Red Hat, SUSE, Canonical, and European cloud providers including OVH Cloud and Scaleway are already reporting record client growth driven by the sovereign cloud investment surge that Gartner projects will see European spending jump 83% in 2026 alone, from 6.9 billion to 12.6 billion euros, before nearly doubling again to 23.1 billion by 2027. The capital is flowing. It is flowing away from American cloud infrastructure and toward European sovereign alternatives. And once capital flows in a direction at that scale with that momentum, the direction does not reverse, because Microsoft offers a better pricing deal or a new data residency commitment. Microsoft's response to France's announcement has been precisely what you would expect from a company whose strategic position depends on maintaining dependencies it cannot defend through honest argument. Bespoke data residency deals offered in bilateral negotiations. Promises that European data stays on European soil formalized in updated contract language. Sales teams working government relationships hard in every affected capital. And none of it addressing the fundamental problem, which is not what Microsoft promises in a contract, but what American law requires regardless of what any contract says. The Cloud Act exists. FISA provisions exist. American surveillance law reaches into American-controlled infrastructure no matter what a licensing agreement specifies. European governments read the fine print carefully, understood what it meant, and started acting accordingly. Microsoft cannot fix the Cloud Act. Microsoft cannot exempt itself from American law. Microsoft cannot make the legal architecture that makes European data vulnerable to American government access disappear by offering a better enterprise pricing tier. The problem is structural. The solution available to European governments is structural, and France's solution, building infrastructure under French legal jurisdiction that no American law can reach, is the only one that actually addresses the problem rather than managing the optics of it. China understood this dynamic years before European governments arrived at the same conclusion through a completely different path. Depending on American software for critical national infrastructure was an unacceptable strategic vulnerability for a major power, and China began its systematic migration away from that dependency years ago with state backing and national priority designation. Now the most sophisticated democratic governments in Europe are arriving at the same structural conclusion driven not by geopolitical rivalry with the United States, but by hard security analysis, documented financial pressure, and lived experience with what vendor lock-in actually costs at national scale when the vendor operates under foreign legal jurisdiction. The paths are different. The destinations are converging. And the global technology order that Microsoft helped construct, the one where Windows was simply the unquestioned default assumption of modern governance everywhere on Earth, is fracturing along geopolitical fault lines that are not going to close. The deepest wound Microsoft is absorbing from France's announcement is not financial, though the financial damage is real, growing, and compounding across every European government currently recalculating their own Microsoft dependency. The deepest damage is to Microsoft's fundamental positioning as a trustworthy partner for democratic governance. Once France, Germany, Italy, the European Parliament, and a growing list of national governments formally conclude that Microsoft represents a sovereignty risk rather than a service provider, that perception becomes the operational reality shaping every procurement decision, every IT strategy, document, every ministerial briefing, and every budget conversation across the continent for the next decade. Microsoft is no longer the institutionally safe choice in European government. It has become the institutionally risky one. And in government procurement, careers do not end from managing risk. They end from ignoring it. The French gendarmerie proved 20 years ago that this works. They saved 50 million euros and operated more securely outside Microsoft's control than they ever had inside it. France is now scaling that proof across 2.5 million government devices with the full institutional weight of the state behind the execution. Germany is studying the blueprint and preparing its own deployment. Italy is executing its own migration programs. The European Parliament has voted its institutional direction. The coordination is real, the funding is committed, the political will has been formalized, and the deadline is set. Every other government watching this unfold, and every government is watching, now has France's documented results, France's sovereign infrastructure model, and France's political cover to use in their own procurement conversations. The question that France's announcement puts on every government at director's desk is the one Microsoft has no answer for. If France decided staying was more dangerous than leaving, and if France's 20 years of gendarmerie results prove that leaving works, what exactly are we still paying Microsoft for? The answer to that question, calculated honestly, is driving the largest digital migration in European history. And it is just getting started.